Well, today I want to focus on three incredible cases out of Australia. One is a Conservative MP who has been thrown out of a Conservative party in Australia because she went to the Posie Parker rally. The second case is a mum who has been served a restraining order for violence simply for speaking out about the fact that biological men shouldn't be playing in a girls' soccer team. And the third case is a Catholic hospital, which is being taken over by the state because it won't perform abortions or euthanasia. Amazing cases. Let's find out more. Or we cross to our Australian correspondent, Lyle Shelton, who's with the Family First organisation. It's a political party over there.
The real Family First, Bob. It's great
Lyle,
to be with you.
Always good to talk to you as well. Look, let's get rid of the trans-Tasman debate because you have got three fascinating cases that I really want to talk about briefly. So let's go through them because I think Australia is going to custard and, it's just unbelievable. Firstly, Moira Deeming. Now, she's a Victorian MP. She was suspended for 9 months in March because she attended a Posie Parker event that was gate-crashed by neo-Nazis. And she's a bit of a campaigner. She advocated for separate toilets for trans people, which I guess some people would say that's a good solution to this issue. She's criticised the Safe Schools program, which is similar to Inside Out New Zealand. Shock horror, she cast out on COVID-19 vaccines. How dare she? And I understand she was privately censured by the team after her maiden speech in which she called for an inquiry into transition practices for gender confused kids. And shock horror, she's also pro-life.
Yeah.
Wow. So has she been expelled from a Conservative party for her beliefs or just being a bit rogue?
No, she's been expelled for her beliefs, Bob. She's been expelled from the Parliamentary Liberal Party. So the party holds its party room meetings when Parliament sits in the state of Victoria. She's a member of that state's upper house, the Legislative Council. And her colleagues have turfed her out. They voted 19-11 to chuck her out based on a false smear surrounding the Posie Parker rally, which occurred in March. We all saw what you New Zealanders did to Posie Parker. That was frightening.
Yeah.
But before then, Moira attended, it was a controversial rally, but it was nowhere near like the scenes we saw in, I think, Auckland or Wellington, Auckland.
No.
Some neo-Nazis gate crashed it. Her leader, John Pasuto, decided to smear her as a Nazi sympathiser. The Nazis had nothing to do with her or with Posie Parker or anyone else at that rally. They just happened to be there. But it was a convenient smear that the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, could use to get rid of someone they don't like because of the views that you just talked about, of pro-life, pro-women and girls views.
And my understanding was her family was actually subject to the tyranny of the Germany Nazi Party. Is that correct?
Yeah, she was raised for part of her childhood by an uncle who was a Holocaust survivor. And so for her to be smeared as a Nazi sympathiser and associate of Nazis was deeply insulting for her. She has spoken very eloquently about this. And that's why she sought to have her name cleared for weeks and weeks, months and months dragged by. And her leader, John Pasuto, refused to honour an agreement to publicly exonerate her once the truth about this Nazi smear, which he perpetrated, once that was known and he was found to be in error, he didn't have the courage or the humility to admit that. And so he let this thing hang over her. She was being disinvited to community events. And basically she'd been defamed. So she tried to push the envelope and said, look, I need to go down a legal route to clear my name. And so her colleagues and John Pasuto, the Liberal leader in the state of Victoria, expelled her quite unjustly. And yet the irony is she was raised for part of her childhood by an uncle who was a Holocaust survivor. I mean, this is just despicable, and it shows the lengths to which the radical left, which are inside the Conservative Party, will go to silence people who share the views that you and I do.
So has she just gone independent now?
No, she's still a member of the organisational wing of the Liberal Party of Victoria, and the members, the grassroots members, love her. John Pesciuto was at a state council meeting at Bendigo at the weekend, and he was booed by half the crowd. He had his stooges in the front row, of course, who gave him a standing ovation, but down the back, everyone was booing, and they were disgusted. And look, there's been overwhelming support for Moira. She is very courageous. She's won the admiration of people all over this nation. And one of our prominent media personalities, Peter Credlin of Sky News, has really taken up her case and has offered Moira a fortnightly spot on Sky News to talk politics with her. So Moira's not going away. She's going to be a thorn in the side of these Liberals who really have shot themselves in the foot.
Right. So is it illegal to be a Christian in Australian politics now, Lyle?
It's becoming very difficult, Bob. Look, as it is in New Zealand and right across the Western world, it's becoming difficult to be a Christian or even just a conservative who speaks up on the rights for women and girls, like this iconic issue we're talking about, the transgender issue. The deputy leader of the Liberal Party federally in Canberra, Susan Ley, recently wrote an opinion piece in the Australian newspaper telling Liberal Party members to stay away from the culture wars. We're not interested in them. Stay out of them. And this is just crazy when mainstream mums and dads are crying out for someone to speak up to stop, their girls having to play against blokes in the local soccer league.
Yeah, well, let's come to that in just a sec. Just one quick point, though. I have figured out why Dan Andrews keeps getting elected in Victoria despite being the worst premier in the history of premiers. It's because there's no opposition. The Conservatives are shooting themselves in the foot in Victoria. Is that correct?
They adopt every one of his wacky social policies in the lead up to last November's election in the state of Victoria. The Liberals even went to that election with the same policy to put parents in jail who try and talk their child out of going to a gender clinic. So this is the Change and Suppression Act that had been passed through the Victorian Parliament. The Liberals said that is a good bill, and they supported it, putting parents in. I mean, it's just unbelievable. That's just the tip of the iceberg of the woke leftist stuff. They're not Labor light, they are Labor green heavy. There is no difference. There's no moral difference between our Conservatives and the left, and it's probably the same in your country as well.
Well, sadly, you are describing a little bit our centre-right party, the National Party. Look, let's move on to mums and dads who are being affected. Kirralie Smith, who I met at the conference when I caught up with you recently. She's part of an organisation called Binary Australia, who's campaigned against transgender women, which of course are biological men, competing in female soccer leagues, and has now been hit with a restraining order preventing her from even discussing the issue. And I hear she organised a campaign where there was 12,000 emails sent to Football New South Wales. So they wouldn't have been too pleased with 12,000 emails. Keep blokes out of women's sport, the petition page read. Now, I know you believe that only girls play soccer, but
That's
the fact
right,
of the matter
Bob.
is... But just tell me, I know you've got a vested interest slightly in this case because you are on the board of Binary Australia,
Correct.
aren't you? Yeah.
Yes, yes, I am.
So what's happening with Kirralie?
Look, this has been quite, distressing for Kirralie, as you can imagine. She's been the subject of at least 2, possibly 3 apprehended personal violence orders, APVOs, as they're called.
Violence.
I believe
now she's not
violence.
a violent person. I've met her.
She's a 51-year-old mother. She's a feisty culture warrior like you and I, but she's impeccably polite and good mannered. She is robust in her debate, but she is absolutely non-violent. The so-called violence is her social media calling out these biological males who are playing in girls' and women's soccer competitions in the state of New South Wales. In some breaking news, Bob, I do believe yesterday I got a text from Kirralie to say that the restraining order, I think, wasn't successful. They sought that. So I need to get across all the detail there, but there was a bit of a legal win yesterday. But nonetheless, there's still a couple of apprehended violence orders against her, and also she's being sued in the New South Wales discrimination board. Now, I could have that term. It's the equivalent of what these
Human
tribunals.
Rights Commission in New Zealand. Yeah.
It's that sort of thing. Yeah. So there's a couple of at least 2 apprehended violence orders and a case now against her and also against the organisation of which I'm a board member. We're also named in that case as well.
Okay. Actually, I saw that.
Can I just add Bob? Sorry, maybe you were going to cover this, but Kirralie released a photo on social media this week of her being served with papers by the
Yeah.
police at her home. And
Yeah.
I was deeply shocked by that. I put it on Twitter. It just went nuts. It was retweeted 1,700 times, like 4,000 times. I've never had anything go like that on Twitter before. But it's a shocking photo because no one in Australia or New Zealand should have the police turning up at their door to serve them papers to go to court simply for saying that men shouldn't be playing against girls in soccer.
Well, that's interesting because I thought you were going to do a mea culpa and say that it was an incorrect photo, because I saw a number of people on Twitter saying you were telling porkies, but you weren't.
You've got to stop reading my trolls, Bob.
Unbelievable. Now, I did actually read that earlier this year, FIFA suggested that transgender footballers could compete at the FIFA Women's World Cup, which is here in New Zealand and in Australia in July and August. So that means biological dudes may be on the soccer pitch for the Women's World Cup. So maybe there's hope for your soccer career after all.
Well, it might be the only hope.
I know. Now, just finally, back to Canberra, you did touch on that, and the ACT government, the state government of Canberra, is taking over Canberra's Calvary Hospital.
Yeah.
They've introduced a special law, which means that they can just march into the premises on 3rd of July before any compensation has been agreed on, and they can basically determine how much money they're going to pay. Why? Because the Catholic-owned hospital is pro-life and wants to heal people and protect people and not kill them. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Look, this is shocking stuff. This is a militant, secular, anti-religious, bigoted government in the ACT. It's a Labor Greens government. And look, this is a brilliant hospital facility. I lived in Canberra for 10 years. I've been a patient there. Their care is fantastic. It's a $200 million plus facility, and they have just come in without warning. They're passing legislation to compulsorily acquire this, and part of their reasoning rests on a government report that was released in April, which said that there's a problem with their religious ethos. I've paraphrased that, but that was named in the report as a reason. Also, that they withhold some medical services. That's code for abortion and euthanasia.
Killing the unborn child, yeah.
This is all about the life issues. It's all about trying to purge that jurisdiction of a hospital that is pro-life and that has a Christian ethos. It's quite chilling stuff. And the question that is being asked here in Australia is, well, what other institutions that a government doesn't like might they come after next? A Christian school that won't put boys in a dress. Where does this end? A church that doesn't preach the right thing, will their property be confiscated next? It's chilling stuff. And to the credit of the Catholics in Canberra and Father Tony Percy of the Save Calvary Committee, they are fighting this, and they're trying to get everyone in the fight from all over the nation. I never thought I'd see stuff like this in my lifetime. This is hostile, it's pernicious, and we've got to stand up to it.
Well, I mean, just one thing, is it the only hospital in Canberra? I mean, is there choice? And is it a private hospital or the one that everybody has to go to?
No, there's choice. There's a government system in Canberra. There's the Canberra Hospital.
Right.
Look, the ACT government would argue it's the only hospital on the north side of Canberra, but Canberra's not that big. It's a nonsense. And the reality is the hospital system that they're running, the waiting lists are blown out. It's a toxic work culture. There's bullying of nurses. It's falling apart. They can't run their own system, and they want to take over the private system. Look, our hospitals in Australia were started by the church. The government did not start hospitals. That's the rich history, and this is terrible what's happening.
Well, I actually checked the media report to make sure it wasn't an article from 1984, because I was just thinking George Orwell all over. Actually, just while we've got you, Lyle, you are waiting on a decision because you defamed drag queens by calling them out and saying they weren't appropriate viewing for libraries. I'm still waiting for my call up, unfortunately. What's the outcome of that case? You're still waiting?
Yeah, I'm still waiting. I had a 3-day trial in November of last year. Final papers were submitted just before Easter, and I'm waiting. And look, the technical term for what I've been accused of is vilification under the Queensland Anti-Discrimination Act. They claim that they've been vilified because I said they were dangerous role models for children, and they are.
Okay. Now, I've always told you this, Lyle, but I think Australia is toast. But you said earlier that you can't believe we've got to this point. I'm not quite sure you're telling the truth, because you wrote a very good book, which I endorsed, where you predicted that a lot of this stuff was coming. So I'm not quite sure we should be surprised, should we?
We shouldn't be, but look, I have to say, Bob, even I'm surprised just at the pace, the speed of it. Yeah, particularly since same-sex marriage was changed here in this country in 2017. I think you guys were a little bit before us, but it has just gathered pace, and I'm just shocked at how. I never thought I'd say this. I mean, I've been one who's probably been someone who's a bit melancholy about all these things over 20, 25 years that I've been in these fights, but the acceleration is unbelievable. And if we don't wake up soon, if things like Kirrili's case, the Calvary Hospital thing don't wake us up, nothing will, and probably only a massive catastrophe when it's too late. I hope it doesn't come to that, and we must work to avoid that. But yeah, it's tough going. But you think Australia's so, mate? I look at New Zealand and think you guys are probably at least 5 years ahead of us. And I'm not trying, in some areas, and I think both of our countries are in dire state, and it's a worry.
Yeah, and I think probably you're right that eventually, I mean, this is happening in sort of hospitals, to school teachers. Eventually, they're going to come into the pulpit, and I think that might be the final wake up, but by then it may be too late. So look, it's a real concern. Like I say, Australia's toast, but then again, I think New Zealand's competing with you, and Canada and the UK. Some cases I've seen coming out of there. I read a case this morning where a teacher has been suspended from teaching for good because referring to a group of kids and said, "Well done, girls," and misgendered one of the people in the group. And has lost his job, and because he spoke up about traditional marriage and showed a PragerU video. It's unbelievable, the cases that are coming through. So anyway, Lyle, always good to touch base with you and to realise that New Zealand isn't the worst country in the world. So we will catch up. We've got a few Aussies coming to our forum, so that will help everybody get some reality checks.
I'll be there. Looking forward to it.
And just a quick ad, what's the name of your book? That best-selling New York Times bestseller?
The one that you endorsed, which I'm sure you read from cover to cover.
I have. It's an excellent read. It's fascinating.
That's very kind. Thank you. I'm waiting for your book. I really think you should write one. Look, mine's called, I kid you not, Notes from 20 Years in the Trenches of the Culture War.
Yeah, highly recommended. Thanks, Lyle.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.